I think what's really inspiring about your story is so twofold, right? I think
Mhm.
number one, people need to be aware that you have now total 5 kids. That is
Yes.
a freaking handful, right?
It
Including full-time jobs, right? So this is a lot to deal with. And not only that, right? You guys, I think, if I'm correct me if I'm mistaken, but you guys went through an affair
yeah.
or issue of an affair. You guys went through leaving the relationship together, and your relationship has been through trauma after trauma after trauma, and now you guys are living a life that's pretty difficult by anyone's standards.
Mhm.
But yet, all I see is that your unit, yourselves, but also you as a unit, is growing stronger and stronger and stronger by the day.
Yeah.
And so the big topic that we've been discussing in our program, and I'm actually writing a book about this, right? Is we all know the term post traumatic stress, but there are many relationships and many people that actually go through post traumatic growth where trauma doesn't weaken them. Trauma actually makes them stronger. And I see the same thing with James, with Jason, with Bax, right? You guys are all here and you became coaches from clients because you guys also go through post traumatic growth in yourselves, but also in your relationship. And I thought that'd be an interesting topic to discuss about, like, what do you think has been your secret, John, Steph, to begin with, on why, like, what differentiates you guys from other couples where, Jason, I'm interested to hear your thoughts too, because you dealt with the death of a kid a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
What makes you grow from that trauma, and what makes others, you think, crumble from that same trauma?
Well, one of the things I remember specifically from your video is that, or from your program is that, normal or regular people get divorced. That's what normal people do. They split, you know, and I don't remember if you said normal or regular,
Average,
or most,
average. I say average, yeah.
okay. And, is that how I want to be? Do I want to be average? Do I want to be like everyone else? Or do I want to fight for, what I want, Um, and even go back to your book, I'm a religious guy. And so I believe that, God, we show our strengthness when we're at our weakest, and so it shows how we can get up and not stumble and keep on going, and, so anytime, life is hard, I just thank God I've been given an opportunity to have life that's this hard, you know, and let my strength shine through that and just keep on working and not stop working and never stop believing that I'm on the right path. I know what I'm doing and I'll get there.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know about you.
I kind of forgot the question on this.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
pretty muted. I want to jump in there too, because John, I think it's the realization, right? Like the realization that my problem is not unique or not special. Meaning, like I've talked to like in my career working for Geoffrey, I've talked to like 17,000 people, right? Like everyone I've talked to. And while my story is difficult, right? Like, having to bury a daughter, my wife buying a new home and getting divorced, seeing another man, home getting flooded. Like it's just letting you guys close to me know more of the details. And it sounds like a doozy. But when I talk to people every day, I hear your guys' story. It's like it's they're all bad, right? Like we all have our own shit. And so it's the realization
You're
that
cutting out.
it's the realization that while we all go through challenges, adversity, and problems, right? Very few are willing to succeed in spite of those problems. And the majority of people are going to fall into the victim mindset and are going to fail because of those problems. So once I realized that I wasn't unique, I wasn't special, I had one option. Either I was going to fail, right, and deal with that post traumatic, kind of stress, or I can take it as fuel and use it for that post traumatic growth, right?
Mhm.
And when you lean into that and you start to get like a taste of it and you start to change your mindsets and you see how this plays out because it's a latency period to this, right? So you really have to kind of push through till you start to see some of the outcome. But if you're like scale watching every day, it's not you're not going to get there, right? And but I think really the biggest thing for there, and I think you talked about this at the very beginning, John, and just like, hey, the victim mindset, right? If we're in our minds thinking that we're hopeless, that we're special, we're unique, right? We're never going to see that post-traumatic growth, right?
Mm.
Exactly.
I think one thing that's interesting with what you John said, and Steph, I would like to hear your thoughts on this too, on how you guys have been able to not just survive through adversity, but also actually get stronger and thrive through it and actually go up in curve, right? Is something about what you said, John, is you seem to perceive challenges and stressors differently, right? So when stressors come for you, you use that as a way to either prove it to yourself, prove it to your partner, prove it to your kids, prove it to God or something. It's like life giving an opportunity to be like, I can do this, right? For me, I use stress as a way to as an opportunity. Basically, this is life giving me an opportunity to teach me a lesson that I otherwise would not have learned. I think the traumas that you go through with your kids, with the affair, with of confronting divorce, forced you guys to actually confront some questions about yourself, about each other, that you wouldn't otherwise have confronted or even asked yourself about or thought about, right? And
Mhm.
I think that perception of how you see stressors makes the massive difference between, I think, why you're able to grow from it and other people are crumbling from it. Because if you don't know how to see those stressors as an opportunity, you will hate it, you will resist it, and you will think the wrong thing through it. You will learn the wrong lessons through it, and you'll end up getting weaker and more traumatized in the long run.
That's yeah, absolutely true. If you don't have the patience and the ability to see at least 2 to 3 different sides of the story, you're not gonna get very far.
Mm.
It's funny too. It wasn't too long ago. I kind of gave that. I was on Reddit, which I was on relationship advice Reddit because someone had popped up, and they were talking about affairs, and I was like, I kind of was like, maybe we should try leaning in and seeing, what happened, immediately banned. I got banned from this for even suggesting that they dig deep. They booted me off the subreddit and banned me from it for even suggesting
'Cause he
that.
didn't wanna be like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah, I was immediately banned,
Mhm.
and that kind of hit me. I'm like, people, they just want to be right.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all that matters. They just want to be right.
Yeah.
And, if that's all you want to be, then you're gonna fail. You're gonna have to accept that you're gonna be wrong, and you gotta be happy that you've been proven wrong. It brings you to a higher level of understanding. And like I said, average people, they just want to be right, and that's why the relationship fails.
Well, I think like there's also like you kind of have to go through that process, don't you, of the post traumatic growth, right? To fully appreciate it. So like naturally, many people do not push themselves to go through experiences like this, right? To try and thrive and grow from these difficult moments. A lot of people like they want to victimize themselves. I mean, everybody on this call, right, at some point or another, felt good to victimize yourself, right? And like again, I kind of relate this back to my own life experience with like, because my mum, like I grew up in a single mother household. I'm the eldest of four children. And, you know, again, for the longest time, I couldn't see my mum. Like I see it now. She'd actually gone through because she went through a lot of difficult stuff as a child, abuse, sexual abuse, all these different things, right? But I couldn't but where she's at now is like, you'd think to see her thriving as she is today, even though she's dysfunctional in her own little ways or whatever, right? But like by all accounts, she's doing really well. But I could never appreciate that like she'd gone through a journey of post traumatic growth herself, right? To kind of turn all of that into something that made her the best mum that she could be, right? And it was only after going through my journey and seeing it from my vantage point that again I'm able to look at her and her journey and fully appreciate that. Whereas prior, I wanted to just almost like blame her for all the things that she didn't do. And there was no appreciation from me, no willingness from me to see the positive journey that she'd actually gone on. And I think that's kind of speaks to these groups that you're talking about because like it's easier to kind of, for lack of a better term, to get together in a little circle jerk, right? And just kind of like all pump each other up and say, yeah, yeah, like she's a bitch, she's a bastard, whatever. Then you don't have to deal with the problem, which might be, well, maybe you had a part to play in this as well, right? So obviously, John, you go in there and then the nail that sticks out gets hammered in. So like, but you know, I rate that you tried. At least you tried, dude. So that's where
Yeah.
that's something.
Well, it's funny, and then they go on to their next relationship, and the same thing happens,
Right.
and it's like, why? Why does this keep happening to me? You know, and I mean, unfortunately, like I said, I was banned, for just having the audacity to say, well, what was the problem? What was going on? Have you leaned into it? Have you looked into it? Why? And they're just like, no, that's not what we do here. I'm like, hey,
Positive support.
no, we
I think James has something to. I think this is a hot topic for James because I know as a coach, as coaches, we've been messaging this thing of like, because the main question that we get from people is, when do I know if I'm ready to maybe select or choose or go for another relationship? Right. So to say, you know what, screw this. This is long dead. Let me just start a new one. And James has always been saying, like, look, the main question to ask is, do you actually understand how to post dramatically grow or not? Because if the answer is no, you can choose a new partner, 1A, 1B, C, D, E, F. If every time a stressor makes you weaker, well, every time there's a misunderstanding, you fight about it. You can't converse nicely. You can't have a conversation about understanding and compassion and actually increase the bond between you two. That leads to a fight, right? Then it doesn't matter who you pick. You're gonna be screwed, right? James, what do you think here? I know you have
Yeah.
thoughts.
No, I agree. I heard this great analogy. It's basically, if you have a bridge and somebody tries to drive a truck over the bridge and the bridge collapses, is the plan to go ahead and say, "Oh, well, maybe the Ford F-150 was the problem. Let me see if a Dodge gets over the bridge instead." And as they're driving over the bridge collapses again. Well, you know what? The Ford and the Dodge both collapsed, so let me try a Chevy and see if I can get that over the bridge. At no point do they even look and think, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I just need to make the bridge stronger so that people can drive the truck over it and not have it be a problem." Right? Like, not being able to take that look, because I think as a default, and I was especially guilty as this, like, you fall into, you wanna protect yourself, you gaslight, you, have arguments, you try to deflect, you try to run away from the conversation, right? It's very difficult to look inward at yourself and say, "You know what? The only constant thing in all of my dissatisfying relationships is me," right? So maybe I should change me and not have to be that same constant in them. So being able to help people recognize that, hey, let's just work on ourselves. Let's get ourselves to that stronger place where we can really show up and be different people and get different results and be that stronger bridge. It's definitely something that we go through and work through. And I think it's, once clients make that shift, and I'm sure John can relate, right? That's the biggest change. That's when everything kind of switches.
Oh, funny story about this, John. I think will make you laugh a bit. With this client, right, John? So you know how in our program we try to have sparring sessions where we try to get you to like understand how to. Okay, so let's say let me throw you this curveball of a misunderstanding, or let me throw you this curveball of a conversation, and see how you can respond and play, and play out the principles, right?
yeah, I've done that with you before.
Yeah. So this is
Yeah.
client, okay? So it's funny, right? So this is client. So he was sparring with someone else around how to handle misunderstandings, right? So this is like, imagine your partner misunderstanding something, the intention behind something you're doing, and you have to now turn that conversation from a negative into a positive thing, right? And so while he was sparring, the other guy started cussing on screen just to like pretend it was like an angry partner, whatever it is. Well, his wife heard that, right? The cussing. And his wife was like, "What the fuck program did you join?" Right? And then he sent me an email later saying like, "Oh, my wife wants a divorce because she heard some cussing from the computer and she doesn't agree with the program. And then I responded to him, I'm like, but that's exactly what I mean though, right? Your partner misunderstood you. This misunderstanding is no different than any misunderstanding you guys can possibly have about anything else. Do you allow this misunderstanding to crumble you both? Or do you take this misunderstanding, this conflict moment, and actually turn it into a positive moment where you guys have a deeper conversation about this thing and they actually come to an agreement? Because if you're saying right now, like, your partner misunderstanding the context of this call made her want to divorce you and you're not able to turn that into a growth opportunity, that is exactly why you're here. Right? That is exactly why you're here. Every stressors become a threat to you. So what do you want to do? Kind of thing. Now, I thought that was such a funny story to be like, that's the whole point, man. Guys, let's be honest. There's a lot of bad relationship advice out there. Advice that often sounds really great on the surface, but when a lot of my clients run to these programs and they follow these great sounding techniques, it actually makes things worse for them. And that is why I do what I do. And for the last 10 years, I've made it my mission to cut through so much of the mountains of bullshit that is out there and show you how the real pros do it. And not only have I lived this myself, I've walked this path, but I've also let thousands of my clients walk through the same path. And often when the situation feels extremely dire and hope is long gone. And if I were to guess, if you're watching this video, your family, your marriage, your relationship means a lot to you right now. And I agree. There's nothing in my life that is more important than my relationship with my close ones. So if this resonates, click subscribe, hit the bell button as well, and share this with someone who needs it. And join me in my mission to make marriages and relationships great again. Let's fucking go, guys.
You know, in these moments, see, it's easy because you two are like understanding now, but that's not the dynamic years ago, right? Because there's so much pent up resentment, and there's just so many, there's so much spite on either side, and there's so much evidence. And I can just imagine John, right, just like me, just trying to push through this misunderstandings, understanding. But Steph, like in those moments, right, like when John's doing that, are you making it easy for him, or is it like internally, is there all this like resentment and like, I don't care what you'll say and what you'll do? Like, kind of walk me through when he's going through that, right? Like, how do you feel?
So, there are, everybody's got days where they've had a bad day. And so he'll be in a mood. And when John's upset, it literally pours off his body. And so the whole house can feel it. But I just try to make his day easier and be like, what can I help with? What needs to be cleaned? What needs to be cooked? And just kind of take and like, I know that selfishness is the big thing. And so like I've taken that and been like, okay, so he's had a bad day, you had a bad day. It doesn't matter whose the bad day was worse. Just work through it. Be positive about it, get him through it, and then he can help you through yours.
Yeah. That's actually another topic that I want to jump into. It's and it goes back to something that you guys said earlier, very early in the interview or in the chat, which is that even after you reconciled, you knew either of you weren't perfect, but I think it's the feeling that it's not perfect, but at least we're going upwards. At
Yeah.
least I see some progress here, right? And so in our program terms, you guys had problems, but you guys didn't feel that catch-22, where
Mhm.
if I share it, I lose. If I don't share it, I also lose. So the only option is to get the fuck out of here, right? But then if you're like, okay, we have enough safety, we have enough, we know the skills, we know the techniques, we know the process to look within ourselves, to process our feelings, but also for each other to process each other's feelings too, and actually get somewhere to an agreement. That is everything. And that is what reconciliation is. And I think that also brings me to like, I think a lot of people have a wrong conception about what reconciliation is. People think reconciliation is like this moment when everything is perfect and all fine and dandy, but reconciliation is when you go from you start to adopt the perfect process. Can you speak towards more of that, of like that feeling of hope and what that what, like trusting that each other have the perfect process, how that contributed to this drive to want to keep going?
Well, we had 3 kids together, and we both kinda dated someone else, and I think we both learned that we wanted to be with each other when it came down to it. Like, think about who you want in the emergency room with you. Like, who do you want there? Who do you want you to see, who can see you at your worst and support you? And we've grown so much together, literally, that I can't imagine it being somebody else at this, it's just not, it's not even a thought in my head. I don't be like, "Oh, I don't wanna be with him anymore." It's just not a thought anymore. We can talk through everything, and just by him making the changes through the relationship class, it made the just talking to each other so much better and clearer.
And like you were saying, Jeffrey, about how it's not, reconciliation isn't a finish line, like we've been met together for 4 years. Uh, 2000, yeah. I mean,
Oh, since the
since
oh, gotcha.
we got back together, let's just say 4 years. It was just even the other day when I came home, because I'm a courier, so I'm on the road by myself all the day or all day, where I realized an area, 4 years, that's when we got back together, of how I was still toxic, and I did. I was thinking about it. I prayed on it, and I came home and I told her. I just was open. I'm just like, you know what? Like, I realize that when I have a bad day, I don't necessarily take it out. I don't yell at people, but I shut down a little bit and I focus on, I get tunnel vision. Like, dishes need to be done. We got to clean this up. I got to get ready for work. And so I'm not mean to anybody, but when she says, like, you can feel he's in a bad mood, it's, don't talk to him right now. He's processing things. And I even came up to her and I says, like, there's times when you're trying to be sweet to me and I act like you're not even there. I just say, I'm trying to get through to the fridge. I'm trying to get this done, and I was like, I just realized that. And this is 4 years after we got back together. It's true. And I'm just like, I just realized that, you know me when I'm upset, and everything that you do to try to make me feel better, sometimes I just completely ignore you know? And I was like, I'm sorry about that. Like, that must be really difficult when you're trying so hard and I'm just ignoring you. And so I came to that realization and I felt good enough to, come tell her, hey, I'm sorry. I realize that this is what I've been doing to you and I'm gonna work on that, and that's what I do. I just was open and honest and saw my own flaws and I don't want her to stop trying to make me feel better. But if I keep on continuing being like that, eventually she's gonna give up.
Yeah.
And then we're back to where we started.
Right, right.
In that process that you're describing, this we talk about like it's not the end goal, right? It's the continuation. But that speaks to one of the biggest misconceptions we have with every new person coming to us. You've heard this before, John, where it's like it's not the 99 things you do right, but it's one thing you get wrong. And most people think Jeffrey's saying, be perfect, right? Like as if any of us in this room were perfect. Like I don't think Jeffrey would. I hear people say, well, I get 99 right. Like, I don't even think he would say that. I know certainly I wouldn't say I get 99 right. But what you're showing there is even when you have those days and like the world gets the best of you, your emotions get the best of you, you're focusing in on the process. The process is one, is you're coming in raising your hand, like taking ownership. You're like, I realize I'm doing this, right? And you've built enough, consistency there of that ownership. And I think it was what allows Steph to say, yeah, great. He's not making excuses. He's not justifying. He's not defending himself. He's not giving reasons why he's doing this, but he's actually taking ownership. He's acknowledging it. And he says he'll work on it.
Yeah.
I know he will. Like it's not going to fix today, but it's going to get better. Right. And which is why every day just gets a little bit better. And yeah, this is why we say it. It's not the destination, right? Like it's the entire journey. And when you do this year after year, this is why you guys are back with us again because it keeps getting better based on that. Yeah.
Right, and even just to add to that, like, even beyond that, right, like, John, you're not doing that because you're trying to manipulate Steph, right? You're trying to manipulate the situation, right? That's your lowest default. That's who you are, right? So when you catch yourself in out of alignment with who you want to be, it doesn't feel right. So you have to address it, right? And then Steph, I imagine when he does that, you're well aware that the reason he's addressing it is not because he's trying to pander to you, but because he's aiming to be his best self. So I think that's a very important distinction as well, because a lot of clients that come in, myself included, when we first start out on the journey, and I'm sure John as well, right? Like the reason you did all these things was because you were doing to try and you wanted to have, right? And the big shift, the big change, and I'm sure you felt this, and it's probably what kind of drew you back to John, Steph, is when you started to realize that like John wasn't doing this because he was trying to put on an act, he wasn't trying to manipulate the situation. I think this guy might actually be changing, right? And that feeling allows you to trust, allows you to sort of surrender back into the relationship. I think that's a really key distinction because, and again, not to waffle on here, but when you were talking about that emergency room thing, it reminded me of a client we talked to some months back. And he was talking about how he'd been in an accident, right? And he was laid up in the hospital. And, his I suppose his wife or his ex-wife, right, didn't come to see him in the hospital, right? And he was so upset and resentful towards her for the fact that she didn't come. I could have been there close to death. She didn't even come to me in the hospital. And we kind of just said, like, yeah, dude, right? Exactly. Like, do you not see like that says way more about you than it actually says about her, right? Because you're laid in the hospital and no one comes to you. To me, that is a massive indication, like James said earlier, maybe I'm the problem, right? Like I'm close to death. No one cares about me. Could that maybe be me?
And like maybe you feeling resentful for nobody coming is why nobody wanted to come in the first place, because that's how you see other people and that's how you treat other people. You judge other people like that, right? That's probably part of the reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a funny story on that one. Because like, whenever like my dogs have like a sixth sense or something. All three of them, right? But one in particular, his name is Bert. Every time I feel I'm stressed, even though I'm not outwardly showing my stress, right? He would sense it. He would go to my hamper. He would piss all over my clothes. So right? It's like a thing. Okay. So then my wife would be like, if she sees piss on my clothes, she'd be like, "Oh, were you upset? Are you upset?" That's like a tell. Are you okay? And even though I'm just like sitting there, like I'm like thinking, ruminating about something, that piss says everything, right? So like, I don't know if your wife can tell, but my dog definitely can tell, and my wife can definitely tell too. But like, I think the process that we're talking about, the perfect process, like Jason was mentioning, right? It's like it's actually much more simple. It's not that you have to be perfect, but do you have the process to acknowledge, to become aware when issues are coming? Do you have the process to cut through your denial, your bullshit, your ego, and actually admit that the problem is there? Right? If you have the process to admit the problem is there, to see it, do you have the process to then grow through it and fix it, resolve it? And this is applying to the level of the self, but also in the relationship too. Because I think a big issue, and I'm sure the coaches can speak to this because they spend more time with the clients now, is denial and having people go through the ego death of just accepting, admitting that, okay, this is my fault. It's one of the hardest breakthroughs we need to get to.
100%.
Yeah.
When
Accountability is everything.
and it took, when you talk about going back a little bit about, I think back said it about, manipulation, and Jeffrey, this is, goes to you. You asked me a while back, have I tried any other relationship programs in the past before joining RR? And I mean, I looked into some, but all they were manipulations. How to get someone essentially to feel bad for you and want to come back. It had nothing to do with fixing the problem. It was just saying, yeah, you're right, this is my fault. It wasn't. It was admitting fault but not taking responsibility. you know and for 20 plus years, that's how I treated her. Whenever there was a fight, you're like, yeah, okay, it's just my fault, whatever. And I mean, we both did that, but we were kids. um but what really struck out to me on the program was just when that bombshell hit, when I could see, um when I can look back at all the little steps. You talk about how everything you do plants a seed, and now that seeds growing into fruit. Now the fruit is bad. You know, how what we do 5 years ago is a problem we're having today. You know, and when I could finally see all those little things in the past that I did, it wasn't that like I pissed her off yesterday. It was I pissed her off 5 years ago. You know, and it's just been growing and growing and growing. And so when I finally could see that, that's just when it hit me. I'm just like, man, I'm an asshole. Like, this isn't even about the affair anymore. If I were in her shoes, what would I do?
Yeah.
You know, do I want to live like this? Can I really blame her? You know, and I can't remember his last name. It was Mike. He ended up marrying someone. I can't remember her name either.
Him, Mike.
Yeah,
Ashley.
yeah. Mike was him and I. You know, when I was living at my aunt's house, him and I would text. You know, and I even brought it up to him. I'm like, bro, like I'm an asshole. You know, that's just it. Like I'm a sadistic asshole. And it wasn't until I could see that to when I'd be like, Mike told me one day that he told his ex, I'm so glad that you found your affair partner. I'm happy. You know, you have one life to live, and I was making you miserable. Thank God for him. Thank God you found some happiness in this negative weather. You know, thank God that you found a ray of sunshine. You know, and it took me years until I could say the same thing.
Guys, those people you just saw, they weren't special. They were hurting, confused, ready to quit, just like you may be right now. But they didn't give up, neither should you. And the first step, our free masterclass. This is where I'll show you the actual process that I've shown thousands of my clients to take them from very dire situations to where they are today, when mainstream advice and a lot of other coaches often have left them for dead. So guys, I've made it my life's mission for the last 10 years to cut through so much of this bullshit, because I was one of those guys who believed that same bullshit. So if you're ready to stop screwing around in the kiddie pool and bullshit advice, click the link, watch the masterclass. At the end of the masterclass, if you want to apply for the program, I'll give you the instructions to do so. And I'm so excited to see more of you join my mission to cut through the BS and make marriages great again.